really the start of the Christmas season, so I guess I should start by saying Merry Christmas. Yeah, thank you. It's hard to look outside and think that it's Christmas season, that's for sure, but the snow and the cold will come. And forgive me, I'm a snow lover. Fortunately, I married a snow lover as well, so we get along just fine and look forward to snow. But I know there are people that don't like that as much, so that's about all I'll say there. Appreciate the supervisor here allowing us the opportunity to use a beautiful facility. We don't always have the space and the setup like this in our town hall coffees, but this one works real well. So Supervisor McDivitt, thanks so much.
Thank you, Congressman. We're glad you're here, and I hope there's a lot of questions for you.
I'm sure there will be.
And no snowflakes today.
Anyway, a lot going on. We head back right after this to the airport and fly to Washington. Brought back a day early this week. Originally was planned to be Tuesday through Friday, and this week because of what was completed last week by the Senate, surprisingly so, on time, and they got their tax package out, and so tonight we'll be taking a vote at 6:30 to send that bill and our bill, which we passed back in November on the Tax Cut to Jobs Act, send that to Conference Committee where the Conference Committee can be seated, House, Senate, Republican, Democrat, and work out a compromise in the differences between the two bills. Hopefully with the intent of having it passed and signed by the President before the end of the year. His desire is to sign it before Christmas. We'll see if that's accomplished. But the process will be undertaken according to Civics 101. We'll see how that works. We're excited about that. This week we also have a couple other key votes. Others may come up, but one will be the short-term, a very short-term CR, continuing resolution, to continue the funding for our government through the 22nd of December, which means we may be coming back on the 22nd, or we could get it done beforehand to make a little longer-term CR. We're hoping that over the course of time, that the pressure will be put on Chuck Schumer, especially, to say it's not worth shutting the government down over the fact that you don't like the proposed spending plan for government. This is something we ought to complete. We have a president who wants to sign a full appropriations package. The House has passed for the first time in 12 years all 12 appropriations bills on time, in budget, keeping with the budget agreement that goes back to 2011 between Senator Patty Murray, a Democrat, and Republican Paul Ryan, who at that time both of them chaired the Budget Committee. And we've kept to that budget agreement since then. The trouble, we haven't been able to deal with the mandatory expenditures, which are 60% of our federal budget. And so if you can't touch mandatory expenditures, then you can't shape a budget to meet the needs of the time. And for that reason, we still have sequestration in place for the military if we keep CRs going. We can't do what we have passed in the House, specifically with the National Defense Authorization Act that bumps up necessary funding for the military, including the first significant pay raise in 8 years. And if we keep doing that, we see things develop more where planes drop out of the sky, boats, ships run into each other, the lack of training, time that can be given to our military, still the best trained in the world, most committed fighting force in the world, and yet we continue to hamstring their efforts because of a crazy deal that's been going on too long with sequestration. And so we're hoping that as we do these very short-term CRs, ultimately the pressure will build upon the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, to stop this filibuster stuff that keeps us from doing what the government is expected to do, and that's pass a budget, pass a spending plan, let the president sign or veto it, but let's move that process forward. So that will be taking place this week as well. Another thing, knowing Monroe County as I do with the avid sporting population here, people committed to Second Amendment liberties will be pleased to know that this week we'll be voting out of the House the reciprocity bill that gives reciprocity for all legal CPL recipients who carry a concealed pistol license, that they can legally go across state lines and not be hampered because one state has a unique CPL requirement in their law, or they have a prohibition about concealed carry, which are very few states in the Union now. But the opportunity for a national reciprocity, because frankly, the Second Amendment is national. It's a constitutional issue. And so there should not be the allowance of states to keep someone who is living under the U.S. Constitution and the right to keep and bear arms, to keep them from doing that. So that bill will be passed. I've co-sponsored that piece of legislation. And finally, we've had the Judiciary Committee take it up, pass it out, and it'll be coming up for a vote this week. So those are some of the issues going on that we go back to in Congress for this week. Appreciate the fact we have the Monroe Evening News here as our moderator. We had a moderator, so I'm going to make it very clear we had a moderator that something came up out of their ability to change and couldn't carry it on. So thank you for being willing to, at short notice, step up to the plate. We want to have as a moderator, someone who is not biased and is not one of my staff members or something like that. And so we thank you for your service. So let's go on with the questions, and we'll try to do our best to get through as many as possible.
Hello, this is Ray Casonas from the Monroe News. These are completely random. I do see that there's people who have had multiple questions, so we'll just start out with a couple right off the top. So Rita from Monroe asks, why is a gas station at Dixie and State Park Road necessary?
There are times when a politician needs to say, I have no idea. I don't. I mean, that's a local issue that I don't think I'll be responsible for, but if that's your question, that's your question. If you want to elaborate on it a bit.
Apparently they tried to rezone a parcel of that piece of property, so they can put a bigger gas station in there. And as a resident, right behind there, I don't want it. I don't want a gas station there. We've got several within a mile and a half. We don't need another gas station. I just wonder why it would be necessary to rezone this for a gas station we really don't need.
Well, let me make it very clear. I have no responsibility for that. And thankfully, the federal government shouldn't have responsibility for that.
Well, now you're aware.
I'm aware of that, but that goes to the local officials to make those decisions. And so the beauty of that is that you can far more easily get to a local official in a local officials meeting as opposed to have to coming to Washington. So I'd encourage you to keep doing that. Again, the federal government has no responsibility for that.
Okay, moving forward, let's go with Mick from Monroe. From what I have read, people making under $75,000 a year will not benefit from this tax cut. How do you plan to address this disparity?
Well, that's just absolutely wrong. That's the only thing I can say. If you read the bill, and you've been able to read our House bill, that makes it very clear the major impact we wanted to provide for was the middle class. Remember, for the last 8 years, the middle class has been decimated. The upper class has done just fine, thank you. And they've grown in numbers, even though their tax burden has increased over those years. Yet, they've done just fine. It's been the middle class that has been hurt with security of job opportunities, the opportunities for advancement, and the unbelievably complex, expensive, costly tax code that's there. I mean, a good friend of mine, former colleague of mine, Dave Camp from Michigan, who chaired the Ways and Means Committee for a number of years, was known to say on many occasions that our tax code in the United States, 70,000 pages, has exponentially more pages than the Bible with none of the good news. And how true that's been. Our effort has been to make a benefit at every tax bracket, and especially the middle class. In fact, that group between $40,000 and $80,000, which is the middle class, has a significant impact in the fact that almost $1,800 of tax benefit will take place for them. And the opportunity for increased income level is $4,000 for a family. Everybody's standard deduction has been increased. For individuals from $6,000 to $12,000, and for a couple filing jointly, or a family, going from $12,000 to $24,000. Child tax credit has been increased from $1,000 to $1,600. So automatically, every child you have has $600 more worth in the family. Plus, we put a family deduction in there as well. So when my kids ultimately are taking care of me and wiping the drool off my face, whatever, in my senior years, they'll get a benefit for caring for that. So, I mean, that report that's being put out is absolutely false. And you can put as many red sheets of paper of disagree up as you want, but read the bill. Next question.
Were you able to read Senate's bill?
I've read most of it.
Even the margins?
I've read most of it, and we will have a chance to read it fully. But the key issue you need to remember is that it'll go to conference committee, so it'll be an all-new bill by the time we have a chance to vote on it, probably a week and a half.
Hopefully it doesn't look like anything.
Ian from Monroe asks, with the passage of large tax cuts in the works, will you now balance the budget by cutting Medicare, Social Security, or Medicaid?
No.
Question.
Okay.
That's absolute.
No, it's not.
I said no.
John from Newport asks, now that the tax overhaul is nearing completion, what is the next big agenda item? Healthcare, immigration, the Great Lakes? Question marks.
Well, I can say all of the above will be involved, but as in discussions with the White House, the agenda items come first, the tax reform. He's continued to be committed to doing reform of the healthcare plan, and with the passage in the House and the Senate, and hopefully a conference committee now, the Senate having put in the repeal of the individual mandate, that is the first big step in finally ridding ourselves of a health care plan that was foisted upon us, that has cost the majority of citizens in the United States more money for health care and worse care. And so that will be a major emphasis, to finally repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act and replace it with a system that gives patients and their providers the primary responsibility to make decisions in the best interest, and to get away from the only time in history that the federal government has ever required its citizens to buy something. We've never done that before. And it's blown up because of that. And while there are a few people, relatively speaking, percentage-wise, that are allegedly better off than they used to be, the majority aren't. You just have to read the emails and hear the phone calls, the letters coming in from people who now have to pay more out-of-pocket expenses, more deductibles, weren't able to keep their health care plan, even though the president promised that. They weren't able to keep their health care provider or their network, and they're worse off because of it. So that's on the agenda. Infrastructure. Legislation is on the agenda, top agenda, and immigration reform, which includes as well building the wall. Whatever that wall means. And it's easy for some who will say that means it's a brick and mortar wall. No, it's not. It's a securing of our borders to make sure that we don't have more Kate Steinleys who didn't get justice.
Okay. So
Next question.
Excuse me. What about the white American terrorists that are killing people on our...
Next question.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Maggie from Dexter has multiple questions, so I'm just going to grab one off
Sure.
the top.
Yeah.
I've been to many coffee hours and read your letters to supporters. There's clearly no love or respect for liberals in your heart. As a liberal in your district, I feel like you wish I didn't exist and don't care what I have to say. What would you say to a congressional Democrat who is rude and dismissive to their conservative constituents?
I've given no indication that I hate liberals. I disagree with liberals.
You just showed it when I asked you a
I
question, you passed on.
Notice the rules here. The way we get the opportunity to have the questions answered is by this source here. We want to get through as many as possible. Liberals, conservatives, independents, libertarians, populists, they're all part of America. When I ran for the seat, I let people know I'm a conservative. I explained why. I explained what I would do, what I would support, what I would vote for. Because of that, or in spite of that, I was elected to represent the 7th District. I realize the 7th District isn't made up of all conservatives. I understand that. So if I hated liberals, I certainly wouldn't have an open town hall meeting. I'd just make sure we invited only conservatives from a list that we could get. I disagree with what Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and their teams are attempting to do. I disagreed with President Obama. But I still worked with President Obama. In fact, on a few occasions voted for some issues he wanted. But to characterize just because I take a strong stance on my political philosophy, which I believe was a foundational political philosophy of this government and this country, in saying we ought to have limited government, especially at the federal level. We ought to have freedom and opportunity for people to make their own decisions and be responsible and carry that responsibility to the point of being accountable if it fails, but getting up and going on. I think that's the way we were designed. So just because I disagree with liberals and we have debates and we have discussions and we have disagreements doesn't mean that they should be characterized as not liking or hating liberals. That is not the truth. And otherwise, like I said, we wouldn't have open town hall meetings like this. And
This is one-sided. You didn't
this is the open meeting, and we've got a moderator here who reads the questions from you, and we go on, and I think we'll accomplish more by having it done that way. Okay.
Janet from Monroe asks, how will you help new high school graduates find and be prepared for jobs? Will you raise taxes?
No, I'm not going to raise taxes, but I think right now we have, across this country, the last figure I heard was 900,000 jobs going lacking for people to fill those jobs. When I go to businesses all across the 7th District, including here in Monroe County, almost the number one request from me is, Congressman, what will you do to foster training for people who can take the jobs that we have available for them? The career, technical, vocational education that will enable people to be prepared to take those jobs. And so as a member of the House Education and Workforce Committee, we've taken that on. Last term, we had even bipartisan effort that was successful with President Obama signing the Skills Act, or the Workforce Opportunity Investment Act, that was intentionally done to reduce the number of federal career and technical job training programs. Turn those dollars back in grants, block grants to the states, and even to local school districts, ISDs, community colleges, manufacturing associations, apprenticeship programs, etc., to use those resources to begin educating people for the jobs in the technical areas, in skilled trades, manufacturing, you name it. And that's in law now, and we're beginning to see the fruits of that in developed educational opportunities for these particular jobs. And we spend a lot of time in meetings like this and others with schools, classrooms, parents, and trying to say, let's get away from that peer pressure that says, my Johnny or Susie needs to go to a 4-year college or university. when in fact they may be best served to go to a community college or go through an apprenticeship program or a paid internship where they're developing certifications and stackable certifications and have the opportunity to make very good incomes and have a career. Let's get away from the fact that the only education that takes place is in the four-year institution. If that's what will be best suited for you or your child, great. But it doesn't work for everybody. And so that's the direction we're taking, and we're continuing to push in that area. We are hopefully, we will be reauthorizing the Higher Education Act shortly. We just introduced it last Friday, and we'll be having our first hearing on it this week in trying to put forward that agenda that sure takes care of higher education at the university and college level, four-year institutions, but also expands it to encourage the use of all sorts of other opportunities to educate people for the real world jobs. So we're going to keep at that. My dad was a machinist, tool and die maker, wanted to be an accountant. The Depression hit, lost his job and lost his scholarship to Northwestern University. And I think he found himself ultimately after the Depression going back to Allied Trade School to get his training as a machinist and tool and die maker, and had a job his entire working life. It carried him through, and I think he enjoyed it far better working with his hands, working with numbers, but numbers on a micrometer, a gap gauge. And I remember him telling my brother and myself numerous times, guys, I'd love to see you go to college or university if that's where you want to go. But if you have a trade, you'll always have a job.
Not right off.
And he worked till he was 73 years of age because he wanted to. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to, and he enjoyed that. And today, you're right, you can start off at significant dollar amount, especially with the overtime that some of these trades get because we don't have enough people in them. So the overtime opportunities, and you don't have a student loan debt either. That's an immediate bump up the economic ladder. And you're doing things that are necessary. Just think about what we went through. I was going to talk about the hurricanes and everything, but let's go on to the next questions.
Mary from Newport asks, as a senior citizen on Medicare living on Social Security and government, how is this tax plan helping me? I lose personal exemptions, state and local income and property tax deductions, and my taxable income goes up, way up.
I don't know how that happens, especially when you get into deductions. I mean, if you have the individual standard deduction, that goes up. Property taxes, I would assume that you're not with a mortgaged home and property taxes that reach the levels. The mortgage home would be $500,000 if you're just getting the mortgage. If you're presently in a home with a mortgage, that stays. Whatever's there, you continue that mortgage deduction on our plan. And I think that's how it'll end up when we negotiate with the Senate as well. So, bottom line is, between the two tax bills, unless you are living in a home that is way at the top level, and 7th District doesn't have many of those homes, that doesn't change for you at all. Again, stay tuned, keep watching. But frankly, our intentions were to make sure that that was not a problem. And in all of the studies that have been put together, it is not shown to be a problem for a person who's on a fixed income, that this immediately bumps it up. Was that your question?
No, it was not.
Let's go on with the questions then.
Steve from Monroe has several questions, so I just grabbed one for now. The repeal of the estate tax harms small businesses like mine. What do you propose to prevent the accumulation of very large family fortunes by preventing the assessment of transfer taxes? Millionaires can surely afford to pay a small amount to private businesses for estate planning.
I'm not sure I understand that question at all, because an estate tax is meant to help business owners and help farmers and help owners of large manufacturing, etc. Was that your question?
I was the person who did the question.
Pardon?
I'm the person who wrote the question,
Okay.
and I perhaps was a little bit less artful than I should be. Most people do not trip the estate tax, which is a transfer tax, and it's never assessed on people who actually earn the funds. When they hit $4.5 million, or about $11 million if they're a married couple, in order to do a proper estate plan that would avoid people having to pay this tax, and possibly even their grandchildren doing it, can be done effectively for under $10,000. In most cases, usually for about 2 or 3. By having businesses such as mine that do such things and help people work their way through the tax code and use it to their advantage, A, it creates a small number of jobs for persons such as myself and those people who assist me. It also causes people to behave in a manner that actually does encourage them to maintain these jobs without the false statement saying, "Oh, we're going to rip off these poor dynastic people who had a business by making them pay taxes on things they've already earned." Only about 600 families in the entire United States are going to get hit by the estate tax this year. I'm sure amongst those people who are doing it, the harm to the taxpayer could be reduced more effectively instead of eliminating this and basically getting rid of an entire. Yes, it's horrible that there is an industry of people like me who are out there helping people navigate through government from doing this, but the problem that we have here is really you're not protecting that many businesses, you're not protecting that many jobs. The people I typically do business with are farmers, people who own small machine shops, etc., small industries. There are many more of them out there in aggregate than there ever will be of these 600 people who are going to get hit this year. So how exactly does this benefit people other than making it sound like we're getting rid of taxes, we're reducing the burden? Really what you're doing is you're picking winners and losers of people who've spent many years learning how to navigate their way through the system. Same thing with immigration, which I know is not on the
Let's stick on this one subject. Let's stick on this one subject. Would you answer this question for me?
Yes.
Should death be a taxable event?
Yes, it should be, because it creates the transfer of assets, just like a sale.
Right.
I disagree with you.
If you convey it to a trust before death, death becomes non-taxable, and you can go ahead and apportion it out. Just
And again, should the government be setting up opportunity for anybody because of the tax structure to have a job that they wouldn't have if the tax structure was equal for everybody?
Yes, they do it, for instance, with fringe benefits, for instance, by making them non-taxable with the employer's half. There's a whole industry of administrators out there that exist because of that.
I get where you're coming from.
So the answer is yes.
Your job is dependent upon having people that have to find some way to keep from paying taxes as much as possible. Why don't we make it simpler for them in saying, we're not going to make death a taxable event. We're going to let you do what you can for yourself and for your progeny in the future. We're going to let you be responsible and achieve success. And we're not going to force you to have to find some person who can help you to try to keep as much so that your successors don't have to take resources that were passed on to them legally and now pay to the government. That's the only thing we're talking about. It's a difference in philosophy. I believe that people ought to be encouraged to be successful. The more people that are successful, the better in this country. The more people are successful, the more taxes that are paid. Ultimately, we find that when we reduce taxes, whether it's with John F. Kennedy, or whether it's with Reagan, or whether it's with Clinton, when we cut the taxes, revenues went up. The problem is, then Congress has to not spend it all. And that's the issue we're going at. So I understand where you're coming from. You want to protect your job. That's fine. But I want to say, let's not force people, even if it is only 600, and I disagree with that, but even if it's only 600 this year, why should they have to pay somebody to protect them from that?
If they don't do anything, their assets go into probate, and then at the state level, those decisions are made. So they still have people saying it goes here, it goes there, it goes anywhere. So there is no avoiding paying a professional to do their job properly.
Let's do what we can from the federal level, and then let my state legislators, who are trying to do the same thing right now, as you know, on the estate tax, let them work it out so Michigan becomes a place where all people can succeed and can use their own resources and pass them on. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
straw man, sir, but I
Next
accept
question.
your proposition.
Kathy from Ann Arbor has several questions. This one asks, were you aware that taxpayer money was being used to settle sexual harassment lawsuits against members of Congress? Why isn't there transparency? And what are you doing to stop this from happening again?
I was not aware. Why isn't there transparency? There should be. And I'm glad for the fact that right now, when this happened, we have leadership in the House, and hopefully the Senate will do the same thing, that won't allow this to happen again. Transparency, already last week we passed the sexual harassment bill that sets new standards beyond what we've had already. My staff have all taken, before this all happened, took the training in sexual harassment. We all have certificates to show for it. I have one of those certificates as well. I'd like to report to you as well. So you don't have to worry about that in my office, either at the district level or the state level or the federal level. We've hired good people. That's not allowed in our office. And we will continue to make sure that that happens. But now that we found out that there have been, and let me give you the exact figures of what so far has been determined by Representative Greg Harper, who chairs the admin committee in the House, going back to the most immediate records we have for what's gone on. Paid settlements involving claims against 6 House member-led offices. 2 of those claims include allegations of sexual discrimination, and 1 of those claims included allegations of sexual harassment. Paid out a total of $359,450, and this comes from the one fund, OCC. There's another fund, our Officeholder Expense Fund, make it very clear, called our MRA, that takes care of all of our functions in the office, takes care of the salary for my staff, takes care of our office leases, takes care of buying paper, pens, whatever's necessary to do the job, also pays for franking, pays for transportation. That we have a set amount every year that every office gets. We found out now that that has been used by some members, and specifically one member from Michigan, to pay out a significant fund. But this is the one that we do have control over from the OCC, Office of Compliance, Office of OOC, excuse me, not OCC. One claim that alleged sexual harassment was for $84,000. We found out that that was now one of our Congress members from Texas. One claim that alleged age discrimination was for $76,000. One claim that alleged discrimination because of sex and religion violations, as well as FSLA, Fair Labor Standards Act, violations and retaliation was for $7,000. One claim that alleged disability discrimination and retaliation was for $37,250. One claim that alleged discrimination claims because of race, national origin, and military service and retaliation was for $5,200. One claim that alleged veteran status discrimination and retaliation was for $150,000. The next steps, the question was asked. A committee hearing on December 7th, 2017, examining reforms to the Congressional Accountability Act of 1995 CAA. That'll take place this week. Implementation of HRES 630 passed earlier this week, last week it was passed, that mandates annual mandatory training, posting of employee rights under CAA, and then a package of reforms of the CAA, Congressional Accountability Act, reforms to Office of House Employment Council, and reforms to the member handbook to pick up the new requirements that will come under the law. That's just the start that's going on. It's a shame that those things took place. It's a shame that those things were held really under the carpet and that we weren't aware of it. Now we are. And when you find out something bad was taking place, you attempt to remedy that. I'm fully committed to doing that inside my office as well as outside. and I think the taxpayer should be served, and ultimately, the victim should be protected. I think you'd agree with me, I hope. Good, got agreeing. Got agreeing, that's a start.
If you knew a colleague.
But we must have the perpetrators made public.
If you knew a colleague was guilty, who would you turn them into? If you personally knew that, what would your process be?
My process would be to go to the administrative office. I'd go to Greg Harper, personally, who's now, it would have been Candace Miller last term. When she headed the administrative committee, I would go to Greg Harper. And in our conference meetings last week, we had several members who stood up and confirmed exactly what I said. That we're not looking past anything anymore. Including if we're on an elevator and we hear talk or we see actions, we're not letting it go by.
And if you go to that person and they do nothing, what is your next step then?
My next step would go to the Speaker of the House, but I think with what's going on here now, and knowing Greg Harper, for instance, it will not be tolerated. Next question.
Russell of Newport asks, what's your opinion on Donald Trump's wall? Do you think it's really necessary?
Absolutely, and again, let me classify the wall. Whatever it takes to secure our borders. Whatever it takes to secure our borders. There are certain parts of the southern wall, especially, or the southern border, that you don't need a wall, you don't need a fence. You've got natural barriers of cliffs that are hundreds of feet tall that you don't need to worry about putting anything on top of that. Unless, of course, our Customs and Border Patrol people begin to see people building ladders or ropes or whatever to get up those things. But those would be way under the need. But there are plenty of places where we could use a fence or a wall or electronic surveillance, drones, whatever. We also need to make sure that we take away the regulations that disallow us from putting our agents on federal lands and national park. Right now, in certain places, because of the natural lands, the parks and the national lands that are there, our Border Patrol agents have to be 50 miles back from the border. That's absurd. Those are federal lands. Why can't we put our own agents on those lands to administer the incursion that's going on? So those things could be changed relatively easily without putting it. But whatever it takes to secure our borders. Now you get to the northern border, which is much larger and really more unprotected than the southern border. With trees, lakes, our natural, Michigan of course, being surrounded on three sides by lakes. And the ability, as Dustin and I flew in a Customs and Border Patrol helicopter and then took a boat on Lake Erie to see what they have to care for. Even with the surveillance cameras on top of the Ren Center, looking down about 30 miles, still the ingenious approaches that these perpetrators of crime, whether it be drugs or whether it be human transport for human trafficking, or whether it be potential terrorist activities that come over the northern borders, we have to secure our borders for the security of our country. So that's what I see as needed for having a border wall.
So what about the terrorists we have right here on our own land?
Let's get them.
Hold on.
Let's get them. Next question.
That are allowed to approve the Second Amendment with...
Brian and Raymond of Monroe have similar questions regarding the trickle-down economics. Why is it when tax cuts are brought up to rob the poor, sick, elderly out of health care, Social Security, or basic human rights? There has been 30 years of proof that the trickle-down effect does not work. Stop lining the pockets of the rich at the cost of the poor.
Well, I disagree with that, of course, and I think history shows that when we've had tax cuts, the economy has grown.
No.
When we've given the opportunity for people to control their own resources, to invest, to save, to spend, revenue always goes up. And that happened under Clinton. That happened under JFK. That happened under Reagan. The problem comes when we don't complete the second part. That's control our spending. And I've always been known as a fighter for controlling spending, whether it was in the state legislature or now in Congress. Because, yeah, when people have their own resources, things go well. When government controls those sources, like the last 8 years, the debt increases, $10 trillion in 8 years, folks. $10 trillion in 8 years, making it 20 trillion. So that meant from George Washington to Barack Obama, $10 trillion took all those years. And then under Barack Obama, it took 8 years to get 10 trillion. Why? Because of big government, spending, the lack of control of spending, the unwillingness to deal with issues like, how do you restructure mandatory spending? What's necessary? What isn't? We're successful because of the deal between Ryan and Murray to control discretionary spending to 2011 levels since 2011. So bottom line is, folks, we are not attempting to hurt the people. Would you agree with me that there are poor Republicans as well as poor Democrats? Would you agree with me that there are Republicans who are on Social Security, Medicare, as well as Democrats on Social Security, Medicare? Do you believe that there are people on Medicaid who are Republicans as well as Democrats? Do you believe some of us are on Medicare, for instance, like me, a Republican? And so, because of that, I want to hurt people on Medicare? Okay, well that's a decision you got to make. I want you to know I do not want to hurt what I paid into involuntarily for many years. I'm entitled to receive Medicare. I'm on it, and I paid for it. Social Security, I paid into it to this very day. I want to make sure that entitlement, because they told me if I did that involuntarily, but did it, even now, I would get it. So, folks, you gotta, I would say, and this is my thoughts, not putting it on you, but my thoughts would say you gotta be a little bit more careful in just taking the wild claims that are coming for political reasons and saying that Republicans want to hurt people. We don't have people with pre-existing conditions if we're Republicans? Talk to me about that.
You wish to help
Talk to me
people
about
at the top,
that.
but not at the bottom.
So we want to make sure that everyone in this country is helped, encouraged, and treated with justice. We want to make sure that happens. And we believe that the greatest design that this world has ever known, even with all its warts and problems for government, took place right here in the United States. And the framers and founders of this country, you've had the civics courses and government courses, and think back to those. They designed this country to be a place where people, everyone, could succeed, and no people were set up better than others if they were willing to get out and use the system. And that was a limited government. I want to go back to that. I'd rather that this township and its government has more pertinence to your lives than anything the federal government does. I would want to see that the state government would have more involvement with your lives than the federal government. Trouble is, over the years, we've turned that around.
You just said.
And now we're trying to turn it back.
You've written a law that's overriding states' rights when it comes to the Second Amendment.
Now, wait a second. And again, I'll occasionally step out of the rules here. But because you're referring to what I said already, you've read the 10th Amendment that secures secures the responsibilities to the states unless the U.S. Constitution establishes a requirement over that. The Second Amendment is Constitution. It's not the second opinion. It's Constitution, and it's meant for everyone in the United States. It's part of our Bill of Rights. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 10th. Eighth, ninth, and 10th. Those are preempted. Those preempt anything the states or local government would do. That's constitutional fact. And that's how the Supreme Court will rule on it as well. So the Second Amendment trumps anything. Our state constitution has an even stronger Second Amendment in it. But even though it has an even stronger Second Amendment in it, and I encourage you to read the state constitution, which is larger than the federal constitution. But the federal constitution, because of the 10th Amendment, trumps in the area of constitution when it's in our federal constitution. And so that's why our reciprocity is simply taking back control that we have and making it very clear, no. As a state, you can't stop a person who has a CPL license from another state, at the very least, because the Second Amendment gives them that right. Next question.
I try to keep the subjects varying here.
You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. Kathy, also from Ann Arbor, she has another question here. The repeal of the Johnson Amendment, which bans churches from engaging in electoral politics, was included in the tax bill. A group of 4,000 religious leaders have said the repeal would be divisive and have a negative impact on unity in civil discourse. Do you believe in the First Amendment's separation of church and state?
I sure do believe in the First Amendment's separation of church and state. Keep the state out of the church. That, if you read the Federalist Papers, you can go read the Federalist Papers, the separation of church and state was say, the state will not establish a church or a religion. You can have, or the federal government will not establish a state, a church or religion. Now, there are plenty of states, when our country was formed, that had their own state churches. That was okay, because you could leave Michigan if you didn't like the state church of Michigan. You could go to Ohio. Oh, I'd never go to Ohio. My brother's a Buckeye, and we'd fight on that all the time. I'm joking, folks, please. Don't, I'm not saying negatives on Ohio.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I grew up in Illinois. I wouldn't go back to Illinois either with what they're doing there. You could have a state church of a state, but the Federalists did not want a federal church. We left England because of that, with the Church of England and the requirements that it had. So the Johnson Amendment put us back to the government saying to pastors, church leaders, we don't care if you've got an opinion on politics because of what politics is doing to your faith life or your firmly, strongly held principles of morality, etc. We're going to say you can't speak out on that. And oh, by the way, you can't say that candidate X espouses the same principles that we here in our church believe. Otherwise, you lose your ability to have your church, to have your tax-free status, etc.
Tax-free, that's my question, and that's the
And
problem.
the bottom line...
If they want to talk politics, then they shouldn't be tax-free.
Well, that's something that we ought to take on in another area with taxes. Personally, we have held that position, and that's the law right now, and it comes under First Amendment liberties, so you can't tax a church into submission to violate its own principles and ultimately not have the benefit of the First Amendment. So again, the Johnson Amendment being removed, I think is a fabulous idea. It gives people the opportunity to hear from their moral authorities, their religious authorities on key issues, and when a pastor steps in the pulpit, do they give away their constitutional rights?
They
don't think
should
so.
be tax-free then, they'll say what
Next
they want.
question. The ability to tax is the ability to destroy. That was what President Ford said one time, and I agree with him. The ability to tax is the ability to destroy. And when you get in the area of First Amendment religious liberties, you don't want to have the ability to destroy. I don't care whether it's evangelical church, whether it's an Assemblies of God church, whether it's a Catholic church, whether it's a mosque. There ought to be religious freedom in this country. Next question.
Lawrence of Monroe writes, why doesn't any congressman or senator address the appeal time for veterans? I have contacted the VA in Washington, and they told me there is a 6 to 8 year waiting time. Can you please look into it?
Call our office. We have addressed that. And in fact, President Obama signed legislation that we've started to see the wait time for appeals go down. If you have that problem, call our office. Let us go to work for you on that, because we've had, is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay.
I wrote to you 3 years ago to help me out with the situation. It's SSPD. You know, I called the VA last week. I'm on 3 days. You're on hold. I left my name and number. Call me back.
Where was that? 3 days in
VA
hold?
downtown Detroit.
Okay, okay.
I contacted Ann Arbor, but I see the VFW is supposed to be representing me right now. You know, I contacted the VA direct. They can't answer my question because the VFW has got my power of attorney. You know, what do? They tell me, I talked to VA 3-4 years ago, 6 to 8 years. That's how long it takes. I got hairy cell leukemia. I was diagnosed 12 years ago. I applied for VA benefits. They denied me. The Veterans Department didn't recognize it. Now, all of a sudden, about 6-7 years ago, oh, now they're recognizing it. I reapplied. Oh, denied. You gotta wait 6 to 8 years for an appeal.
Alex, give me your card. We'll take a look at it again, find out what the records were and what we were able to tell you as a result of
The
it.
same thing, the VA, you put me to somebody in the VA.
We-
They're not doing nothing. You know, I'm 67 years old.
No, I appreciate
I have
that.
to wait another 4 or 5 years.
No,
I got it's remission right now. It
Great.
happened to me twice. The third time, 6 to 8 years, I'll be buried under.
please give us another chance. We're not miracle workers, and I think this is another example why the bigger the government program, the more problem you have with dealing with it. And the VA has been that problem. And we're attempting to change, and that started, give credit where credit's due, in the last administration, and it continues now. But we have embedded bureaucracy in the VA that makes it very difficult. But let us keep working for you. Again, folks, the larger the government gets, the less control the people have. That's why we need to roll as much back as possible to the states and local communities. So that is intended in this little document. I mean, that's the Constitution. It's also the jury handbook. It has the Bill of Rights, of course, in it. It shouldn't be that complicated. We've let our system grow too large and intrusive into our lives. And that's why we're attempting to downsize it and turn it back to the people, and it's not easy to do that. Next question.
This is a follow-up to the wall question. Wouldn't it be, Steve from Monroe, wouldn't it be more efficient to make Mexico enforce its obligations to refugees and immigrants in Mexico? Refugees who
Transit third countries don't have the right to apply for refugee status in the United States.
yes.
So, for instance, and I'll just explain, we're only a signatory to one of those conventions. Mexico is a signatory to both. A lot of the immigration that we hear about is from Central America. I'm assuming these people are transiting Mexico to get to Guatemala, etc. Why don't we just tell Mexico, instead of doing this thing putting up a wall, which is basically a hostile thing towards the Mexicans. Why don't we just say, use soft power and say, you have these obligations towards these individuals, and we're going to hold you to it based on the treaties that you voluntarily signed and ratified, rather than saying, oh, we're going to put a wall up and say everybody who is from that part of the Americas that we don't.
Well, you'll be happy to know that that's the approach that this administration is taking. And because of that, you'll be happy to know that the incursions of illegals in the United States has dropped 75% in the last almost year now. They're getting
access to your metrics, but I know
well, it's been in the newspapers, unfortunately, but that's encouraging. They're starting to get the idea that we finally have a government here that said enough's enough, and are speaking for the people and saying, legals. Yes, we'll welcome legals in this country. You have something to offer to America, like most of our ancestors that came, including my father. Offer something to America, come ahead. Do it legally.
I'll out myself as a legal, with an L, immigrant, and I am in favor of predictable immigration, but I also know, as somebody who is originally from Canada, that if I was from Mexico, I would have had a very different or very treatment from the government when it came time to actually move here.
You might,
and
you might not.
And that may or may not have been legitimate, even if I would have had the exact same credentials. And I also know that there are a heck of a lot more Canadian illegals here than anybody will ever admit. They just happen to be invisible.
Well, if you know of some of them,
I'm not gonna,
why don't you report them? If you know of them, report them.
If they are detected and they seek my services, I will represent them happily.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Well, that's why we need laws in America to make sure that we all are cared for. You, as well as people who say, we disagree with you. If you know these illegals here, you ought to be saying, listen, I want you to stay, but I want you to stay legally. Next question.
Paul from Ottawa Lake wrote a lengthy note here, but I think the last paragraph would be understandable. As a retired senior who worked all his life paying into this system, I expected and planned on the promised benefits going forward. Seniors have limited incomes with little opportunities to become gainfully employed. How are you going to protect your senior constituents from the threat of becoming destitute by a tax shift reform bill that leaves seniors without good options?
Talk to me. Talk to me.
This is yours?
No, but I feel the same way.
This is his.
Yeah.
I wish you'd read the rest of it.
Paul, you know, I've already said, Social Security entitlement programs that you paid into and you expected, you were promised, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect those. And sadly,
you already passed it in 2010, the PAYGO Act, and if you have so much spending, deficit spending, it automatically cuts across the board, and they predicted a 4% cut in Medicare going, when you start with these tax cuts for the wealthy, it's going to automatically cut our Medicare and Social Security, and which is.
You come back to me, Paul. Paul, you come back to me when you see that. Having had this very conversation with the Speaker of the House just this past week, having a written form from the Speaker now given out to the entire House Republican conference, and maybe he went to the Democrats as well. That's not happening. We're not going to let that happen. And the only way it happens, if Chuck Schumer uses his power as a minority leader with filibuster and cloture, stoppage of cloture votes, will stop those things from happening. And I'm hoping that, in turn, gives our senators the guts to say, nuts with this cloture rule anymore. It's gone way beyond doing what the Senate's supposed to do, to be that saucer under the hot coffee cup, to cool things off, to slow things down, but not to stop things from happening. And that's where we have the problem now. But Paul, come back to me when you see that happen. I don't think you're going to see it. Next question.
John of Monroe, in 2011, the legislature in Michigan gave businesses $1.2 billion tax cut. Subsequently, a budget shortfall followed and state support for schools and municipalities was slashed, causing hardship and emergency managers across the state. If the federal tax cut succeeds, what do you expect will follow in defunding of programs and services?
I don't expect that to happen at all, especially if we have the opportunity to put a full appropriations package through that has taken in consideration the dollars we have, the priorities we have for government, overbloated programs that are not even functioning anymore, but we're still paying for them because they're in mandatory areas. I mean, that's the problem that happens at some states, that they put tax cuts through. Some did away with total taxes, income tax, etc., but then didn't stop the spending. That's what we have to do, and that's where the feet need to be put to the fire of legislators, myself included, to make sure that we get that done as well. We saw here in the state of Michigan in the 90s, when we put through in a bipartisan fashion, especially the one term that I was privileged to be there when we had equal number of Democrats and Republicans. Only time in history. We had 55 Democrats, 55 Republicans. Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick and I co-chaired. One month I was a chairman, next month she was the chairman of the Transportation Subcommittee on Appropriations. We had two speakers of the House. One month the Speaker Paul Hilligans, and next it was Curtis Hertel. That year we put through the majority of those 26 tax cuts. But we also put through spending cuts and reprioritization in every area of our budget, from natural resources to education. And it worked. Problem came, new administration came in and started spending more and did away with the welfare reform that we did. That was Educare and Workfare. That worked. We stopped that, and all of a sudden we see the cost start to rise again. So it takes restraint, and we need to be committed to that. One more question. He's always worried as he should, getting me to the airport on time, but let's do one more question. We started 3 minutes late, so.
I guess I'll try this one. I am a sole proprietor with chronic health issues. Long-term, my bills and taxes will go up. How is that okay?
It's not okay. That's all I can say. It's not okay. And I think your health care is going up. It's gone up exponentially. Double-digit increases since the inception of the Affordable Care Act.
Before that.
And we need to find the solution. The Affordable Care Act wasn't the solution. A patient-centered approach that says the patient and the medical care provider ought to be the ones to make the best decisions for your care and what you need. And then let competition increase by allowing the purchase across state lines, expanding the area, the creativity, the ability to have it, and you be the guy or the gal who decides what you're going to pay, who you're going to buy it from, and have that care given for yourself. So that has to be there.
Why are you removing tax exemptions for the severely ill in the tax bill?
I think you'll have to talk to a senator about that. And in the conference committee, we expect to have some changes. We expect to make things the best we can to move forward this country. And we're committed to doing that.
Are you going to?
I want to say thank you to each of you for being here today. I want to also say, going back to one of the first questions, whether I agree or disagree with you doesn't make me consider you less American than me.
It never seems like that.
We're all Americans. I have strong positions, and that's why I was elected. And that's why there's strong opposition to me too from a sector of, that's America. That's the way it's always worked. Fortunately, we haven't seen any duels take place in Congress in a long time, and a vice president not shooting a member of Congress. I appreciate that. But there's going to be debate. And there are some people, sadly, I get it, I wasn't happy with the election of the last president, but I called him president. And where we could work together, we worked together. Where I didn't agree, we fought on those issues. That's America.
But he wasn't crazy.
But it's time.
This isn't normal?
It's
though?
time to get on with it, folks. The election happened, the American public said, this is where we're at. And so, all I want to say to you, in spite of that, have a Merry Christmas, a happier New Year, and as America, man alive, compared to the rest of the world, have a great Christmas.
Get out
Thank you.
there and vote, and if you don't agree with him, don't vote for him.